Well, I think Friday was a massacre, for markets because it was a short window, not a lot of liquidity, and you could see by the panic in the VIX, it was the fourth largest ever, according to Charles Bolello, that was investor panic. And generally, in an environment like this, early in expansion, I think you have to buy the dip. So I think markets are very viable here. I don't know if today's the bottom, but I think the low is sometime this week, and I think the year-end everything rally is actually still in play.
Really? So you don't even see this postponing what would have ordinarily been, or what would be a year-end melt-up?
Carl, I mean, it's a great question because, as you know, markets have a lot of things to worry about, and as you know, COVID continues to be unpredictable. But we also know that every variant has had an expiration date. I mean, we just have to look at Florida, where cases have virtually disappeared there, but they were in the heart of the Delta surge over the summer. And with this wall of worry and skepticism, and especially over the weekend, people think that there would be a lot of follow through today. I think people did take a lot of risk off the table. And as you know, if people are off sides at a time when we had a seasonal strength, I think that's the rally's still intact.
Tom, what do you make of what's happened to some of the, I guess, riskier stocks, of growth names like Chegg, Stitch Fix, Zoom, C3AI? I mean, we talk about kind of moderate dips in some tech names that maybe you want to buy, but then some of these names have had dramatic, you can't even just call them dips, they're plunges. Do you think about the value of their innovation differently? Do you think about what's a bargain differently in this kind of situation?
John, that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the magic of tech stocks is, one is that historically they're all great compounders, right? Because a company really finds and really shows a lot of strength and dominance in a market, and they capture a lot of value because there isn't a lot of capex behind it. But that compounding of earnings sometimes gets overexpressed as a multiple expansion. And I think a lot of the stay-at-home stocks that you're citing are derating, even though they're structurally good businesses. If I looked at where tech has a chance for the multiples to actually expand faster than earnings, I think it's going to be the FANG complex. Stocks like Amazon and Apple and Facebook and Google and Netflix, they've compounded earnings in 2021. But actually saw a multiple compression. So I think those are the names in 2022 that could really power tech.
Hey, Tom, since you're a Bitcoin bull, I have to ask you, if Dorsey is getting ready to focus on what he calls his true passion, Bitcoin, what does that mean for the crypto complex? I mean, this is a guy who has created two hugely important companies in two very important spaces, fintech and social media. Will he do the same for Bitcoin? Will that give it a leg over Ethereum? What do you think? Is it bullish for crypto?
Yes, it's bullish for crypto. One thing to keep in mind is that crypto is the intersection of financial services and technology. I mean, that's literally 60% of the economy. I mean, really, financial services is the other half of GDP. So it's a huge market, and there isn't enough capital actually allocated towards crypto innovation. So it takes people like Jack Dorsey to really marshal focus. And I don't think this space is overinvested yet. So I think it's still earliest days, not only for things like projects like Bitcoin or Ethereum, but really for the amount of crypto equities, businesses that are built around crypto. I think this is still the earliest days.
Hey, finally, Tom, one of the names that you've helped coin is the granny shot, meaning the stock pick that is a no-brainer, essentially, very easy, in your view, on a relative basis. Where do cyclicals fit in that? Do you think as we progress from wave to wave, there is some long-term degradation in consumer behavior or mobility?
Carl, that's a great question, because it's an unknown, right? Because we've never had essentially a chronic plague like COVID, and it's almost impossible to model. But one of the things that I know investors tend to do is, they tend to value visibility. So when COVID is surging, they're really focused on secular growth ideas like FANG. But at the same time, these cyclical companies that are, whether they're consumer discretionary like hotels, gaming, or it's industrial companies like Caterpillar, I mean, they are stringently managing costs. They've really right-sized their businesses, The operating leverage is still the story that really shined in third quarter earnings, and I think it's still the early stages because you look at the earnings revisions 4 quarters into this expansion, you're still talking about 10 percentage points of earnings beat. So I think cyclicals are going to surprise next year because of their operating leverage. And now that their multiples are low, I mean, some of these energy stocks are 3 times free cash flow. It's a combination of big equity gains.
Yeah, that's a great point, and one that obviously gets buried by a ton of other news. Tom, we look forward to checking in again soon. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.